live. Let's see. Okay, we are live on Facebook. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for wherever you are in the world. My name is Anna. I'm delighted to be here, coming to you from the New York Open Center. Today, I am delighted to have a conversation with two pain experts, Dr. Les Aria and Dr. David Hanscom. And we are getting ready for an event that they'll be hosting, an immersive retreat in May on relieving pain. And by pain, we do mean chronic pain, physical pain, emotional pain, and the whole constellation of other experiences that come with that. So before I get too far into the conversation, New York Open Center really welcomes you. The New York Open Center is the longest running urban holistic health education center and retreat center in the United States. Since 1984, they have been hosting and gathering conversations, trainings, retreats for people interested in spiritual practice, the healing arts, consciousness, ecological studies. So this has been 36 years running, and we've had a location in the heart of Midtown Manhattan for 36 years. COVID has temporarily closed the building down. The building will be reopening at some point. But in the meantime, it's really invited us to broaden out, to come online and invite people from all over the world in all time zones to come in and enjoy and learn these important conversations and find community. So we're very grateful and we welcome everybody. So I've been delighted that I've been working with Les and with David before, and I'll give a very slight introduction of who they are, and then we'll drop into the conversation about relieving chronic physical and emotional pain. So David, you are a spine surgeon, right, who spent many, many years, decades providing leading surgeries until you realized that there were other ways of relieving this pain and that surgeries were dangerous and or not always appropriate. And you created a protocol that created amazing results for people where they would become pain-free with your guidance, without surgery, without medicines, without any drugs. So, and you also have your own pain journey as well that really informed your practice.
Right. I mean, I spent 8 years being a very aggressive spine surgeon. Seattle had 9 times the rate of spine fusions for back pain as any place in the country, and I was part of that team. And in 1993, a paper came out that showed that the success rate of a spine fusion for back pain was 22%. So I just stopped. I didn't know what to do as an alternative, but I wasn't going to do that. Then I spent the next 15 years in chronic pain myself, and that's how the doc journey evolved, was my own experience, sharing it with patients, watching successes. And so I'm excited about the last couple of years, how the whole process has evolved to be a very consistent way out of chronic pain.
That's great. So you're bringing both your personal experience, your surgical experience, your medical experience, and sharing that with others.
Right. And now the neuroscience research the last 10 years is unbelievable. I mean, it's really clear what's going on. And we're just trying to bring those concepts into mainstream medicine, also into public awareness.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. And welcome, Dr. Les Aria. And Les, you are a pain psychologist. Or is it psychologist or psychiatrist?
Psychologist, yes.
Psychologist, okay. And you specialize in working with people who have pretty complicated and considered unresolvable pain, and you're working from the psychological perspective. So would you share a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this?
Sure, absolutely. I think the short story of this is I never wanted to work with chronic pain patients. That's the sad part, but the good part is this is because I didn't have the skills. When I was in my training, I observed a particular chronic pain patient who was severely just in agonizing pain, and picked up the stool and threw it across the room. And I said, "Oh boy, that's one population I don't want to work with." Well, never say never. And after an accidental patient who just got better accidentally, and I worked with them and just took a shot. And when they got better, that's when I realized that, wait a minute, the world is not flat, the world is round, which means that I was told that pain could not get better if you have a structural nerve or tissue injury. But the body heals. The mind does heal the body, and the body helps heal the mind. And that's when I realized that I actually do like this challenge. And then it became a passion, and now it is my heart mission is to help people suffer unnecessarily with the tools that I've been given. And on a daily basis with David, we sharpen our tools together, and we help people suffer less.
That's great. So let's talk about that. And I'm going to start with some basic questions because there's some distinctions here. First of all, what is pain? And what is the difference between pain and chronic pain? How do we know we've hit a chronic state?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is this is there are different terms for this, but just for the audience, we can kind of put this into an arbitrary definition. We can think of acute pain as anything less than 3 months. And
Okay.
so the body goes through inflammation and it's kind of healing. And David can pick up where I'm leaving off here. And so that's, let's just say acute pain is basically anything less than 3 months. Anything greater than 3 months, 3, 6, 9, and on, that's when actually the body is really healed. The tissues have healed, the nerves have healed, the structural stuff in the spine and the body is healed. However, there's something else that's operating, and that's what really chronic pain is. Chronic pain is when your mind, your brain, your body is healed, but the pain continues because it's something else than beyond structure, nerves, and tissue. David, could you add a little bit more to what I just said?
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that pain just says danger. It's just a warning signal that says danger, and without pain, we wouldn't survive. And people that are born without pain, a pain system called congenital indifference to pain, only live to be about 10 or 15 years old because they can't protect themselves. So pain with its bright lights, loud sounds, too hot, too cold, it just says danger. Then your body fires up and you have a sensation that forces you to take action. That sensation is what we call anxiety. So anxiety is a result of a threat, not the cause. And so it's unpleasant. It forces us to take action. I was taught that anxiety was a psychological construct, and it's a physiological total body response to a threat. So by understanding that this anxiety thing is a physiological response, not primarily psychological, although the psyche has a lot to do with it, it changes the game because its unconscious survival response is necessary. Without anxiety, you would not live more than about 2 minutes. You wouldn't breathe.
Right.
You walk out into a car, in front of a car. So anxiety is a gift. It's how we evolved, it's how we survive.
Yeah.
So once you understand it's a gift and not your identity, makes a huge difference.
Yeah. David, and I wanted to mention something else, which I think would be helpful for the audience to know, since you
Right.
brought up acute and chronic pain. And David and I, we've shared many patients together. One specifically is this is, so here's some true evidence on brain science. Most of us know what phantom limb pain is when someone, for example, loses a limb. A veteran, for example, comes back and they've lost a limb, but they believe, but the limb continues to hurt that's no longer there. That's proof that pain actually comes from the brain. And what keeps that going is the nervous system, kind of what David said, that's in heightened state of danger and uncertainty. And so that's where we're working from that paradigm. So that was well said, David.
That's great. So that's a great, I heard physical pain. And then we moved into anxiety. And I know that you both there's physical
So
pain.
Anna, are you there?
Yeah, can you see
Everybody
me?
just froze for me.
I'm here.
Yeah.
You just froze slightly.
David's meditating.
David's meditating. David, we can hear you. We can hear you and Les and I can see each other. So are you still there?
We'll wait for him to come back on. And but you were talking about the emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's physical pain, which feels like we all know what that is, back pain and other pain. And then there's emotional pain. And then there's anxiety. So can you connect those dots for me? Because emotional pain is so real and is so vast.
Yeah.
And I know that it's just a part of the human condition. Oh,
Right.
David,
Right.
he'll
Looks
come
like
back.
we lost David. Yes. And so while we wait for David to come on back, I think this is real simple. Let me just start with a simple
Yeah.
study that was done, a fantastic study out of UCLA. Let's just kind of bridge this. Is emotional pain kind of the same as physical pain? The answer is yes. So emotional pain and physical pain actually share. So check this out. Is before an injury becomes chronic, doesn't matter what kind of injury, it is actually processed in a higher part of the brain, but when it becomes chronic, your brain reorganizes it into the emotional part of the brain. So whenever we feel rejected, stressed, uncertain, the pain circuitry and the emotional circuitry share the same room. That is why David and I do not differentiate between physical and emotional pain in the sense that it's a shared living space or real estate in the brain.
Wow, that's a big deal to know. So things like stress and anger, I mean, the emotional gamut is stress, anger, guilt, fear, shame, all of that then actually kind of merges with the previous physical or acute
Yep,
pain.
it lights up. It basically lights up a whole circuitry. So this
Okay.
is what they found out at UCLA. They've done the study and replicated it. They found that when someone's socially rejected, when someone is shunned, you actually develop body pain. Hence the word when we break up with someone we thought we loved and they loved us, and or someone passes away, your heart aches. They found out that that's the same circuitry that produces muscle pain, body pain. So it's just the latest brain research to show is, look, we need to stop differentiating. When is this the brain? Is this the mind? Is this the body? Is this my back pain? No, it's basically one.
It's
We're whole, we're complete. And it's really nice to have science to back us up on that.
That's so when I can be in chronic pain if I've been in a chronic state of anger, sadness, anxiety,
Yes.
then I would count as being somebody who can say I'm in chronic pain, and the prescriptions and the tools that you both offer would support me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And David, well, welcome back. I'm not sure you can hear me. We're just talking about, is there similarities or differences between emotional pain and physical pain? And I was just telling Anna and the audience that it really shares the same real estate in the brain. And Anna just asked a great question, which I thought maybe it'd be neat for you to hop on this conversation, is, that anxiety, why does that kind of contribute to the physical pain? Do you want to take that question?
Well, what happens is that when you're under threat, again, anxiety just is that sensation generated by threat. We do agree on that, Les, right? The sympathetic nervous system that
Yep.
you feel your adrenaline, cortisol, you feel inflammation. There's actually inflammatory proteins in your brain called cytokines that inflame your brain. But the bottom line, it increases the sensitivity of the brain. It increases the speed of nerve conduction by double. So you physically feel the pain more. And we now know, I always thought that anxiety was physiological, but now we know it's actually inflammatory. So there's a bunch of papers now showing that anxiety represents the body on fire, really. You're inflamed. So, and what's interesting is that the data is deep. It's been there for 20 years. And so it's not new data. And I guess what our group has been doing is DR Claus, one of our friends talks about, we're simply scrubbing the data. We're just digging in and seeing what's there. And medicine gets busy. We don't necessarily bring things into mainstream medicine right away. But I guess what Les and I are so passionate about is that we take people that are so miserable, and the impact of chronic pain has been documented to be the same impact on your life as having terminal cancer. And we look at the paper, it's actually a little bit worse, because at least with terminal cancer, you know what the problem is. Not that it's a great problem. In
Right.
chronic pain, you don't know what the problem is. People are not telling you anything. And with cancer, there's an endpoint, either positive or negative, but there is an endpoint. And people in chronic pain don't have an endpoint, and humans don't tolerate not having an endpoint very well. So the suffering in chronic pain is horrible. And I was there for 15 years. I suffered as badly as anybody I know. And one reason I think that the journey that Les and I have evolved is that we have sort of seen it from the bottom up and help people walk through it step by step. And it's not hard. It's not magic. It's not about believing in Les Aria or David Hanscom. It's just rerouting the brain to go a different direction.
That's
And so we're taking the basic neuroscience concepts and just doing it one step at a time in a sequence. And it's a very consistent process.
That's great. So why don't we go there? Why don't we, and I want to table another question for later and I'll remember it. I want to talk about how anxiety is inflammatory disease, but I'm going to table that. Can you go into, well, then how do you solve it? Like you said it so well, David, when we're in chronic pain, physical or emotional, how could you tell me that I don't need major amounts of therapy, drugs, or surgery?
So remember, the body's physiology is how it functions. It's like when a car's structure is the structure, when you turn the engine on and it's running, that's the physiology of the car. So the body has bones, skins, ligaments, all sorts of stuff, but how the heart pumps, the blood pressure, the chemical makeup is a physiology. So when you do structural things for a physiological problem, it can't work. And guess what? It doesn't work. So what we're doing, we're going after the physiology. We're trying to help the body calm down. So I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question that you won't answer. I'm not trying to make you look bad. But okay, so anxiety represents that. It's just a description. It's a word like you're on the beach and you're in the sun and you are relaxed. Relaxed is a description of how you feel at that moment. Your body's full of serotonin and dopamine and anti-inflammatory cytokines. You feel great. So the word for that situation is relaxed. So then you're agitated and you're being threatened and you're full of adrenaline and cortisol and all these different inflammatory drugs. Why you feel anxious. So anxiety is just a description of that state. It's not a psychological construct. So the question is, if anxiety represents sensation generated by your sympathetic nervous system, there's all this information, how do you lower anxiety? Oh, by the way, one other detail, which is big. The unconscious brain processes between 20 to 40 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes 40.
So
So it's a complete so the unconscious brain is not subject to rational control.
Right, exactly.
And plus, anxiety is necessary to stay alive. So the question is, if it's not subject to rational control and you need it to stay alive, how do you lower anxiety?
I would say take a pill.
Actually, that works.
I'm being facetious, but where I go is something outside of myself that like fixes this thing because I don't have the power to fix it.
So I'm going to throw this question back to Dr. Aria here in a second, but I've said this for a while. If the entire world could be on Valium or Xanax, we would have world peace. The reason why those drugs are so addicting is that they work. They actually calm down the body's inflammation. They're anti-inflammatory drugs, and they really work. But they're addicting. They don't really give you good long-term solutions. So the answer to the question is a rhetorical question. You simply lower the body's stress response. You lower the actual chemicals, and Dr. Aria has taught me a lot about actually lowering the stress response, but you also can train your brain to be less reactive. And so we'll talk about that in a second, but any comments on that, Les?
Yeah, I wanted to hop on to tie what you just said to Anna's question. I'm going to give you a sentence, and I just want the audience just to digest it. It's kind of sit with it. It's like great coffee or a beverage or something delicious, just to savor.
He was listening. He wants me to digest it.
It might be.
I'm listening. Okay, I got it.
So, absolutely. So one of the things is this is when we feel safe enough, we will heal.
Right.
When we feel safe enough, outside of us, inside of us, or what's in between us. When we can win those three domains, and all three domains, if our life is uncertain, we don't know how to handle our life skills or relationships or bosses and finances, it's just overwhelming. And that's our reality. And when we don't know how to handle the thoughts and sensations in our body, and we don't know how to deal with conflict or uncertainty between us, that will activate the autonomic nervous system. And that's what David is really getting at, is in the simplicity of this statement is you will heal when your nervous system feels safe enough. And the tools we bring facilitate that and cultivate those states of safety. And in a state of safety, and we like using groups. And groups, when we kind of create a sense of culture where we support each other and train each other, such as this weekend retreat, or when we, David and I do large groups and in our trainings, it's amazing to see how we can laugh, cry at the same time, and also have fun while we learn the skills to help dial the autonomic nervous system down and feeling safe. The threat drops, the body starts to heal.
Right. So can you talk about the tools that you use to help people feel safe, and kind of what's the science and behind that protocol or that technique?
Yeah,
Let me say one thing really quickly before
Yeah.
you give the real answer. So there's three parts. What we finally sorted out with the autonomic nervous system, there's three parts to this equation. And the problem in medicine, we throw sort of random solutions at a complex problem. So you have the output, the actual state of your body's chemistry is going to be either safe, neutral, or threatened. So that's the outcome. So at the end of the day, you want to either be neutral or safe. And when you're under threat, you want to minimize the time you're under threat. The middle part's the nervous system. So your nervous system is either calm or hyperreactive. And if it's hyperreactive, it takes less stress to set the whole thing up. So the nervous system is the part of it to be addressed. And then the input. So for instance, what do you load into your brain? Unpleasant news, gossip, complaining, anger from the past, forgiveness. And the input comes from what are you choosing to hold on to? And what are you choosing to put into your brain? Do you have the input, the nervous system, and the output are the categories of interventions that we use?
Awesome.
Dr. Aria, you now have the floor.
That's great. That makes sense. So can we talk about that? So that sounds so good, but what do the tools look like and feel like? What would you say I needed to do?
Yeah. David, let me hop on this one and then if you could, because David and I are touching the elephant at a different angle, but it's the same one with touching. And he's got a great methodology, and I have mine too. The more, all roads lead to this healing, so that David and I choose. So the first and number one, and David, please correct me if I'm wrong here. The number one intervention is to help re-educate people about why you actually hurt, meaning that why you're still continuing to experience chronic pain, right, David?
Right. Yeah. If you don't know what's going on, you're anxious. Remember, anxiety itself is by definition inflammatory. So the more you understand, once you understand the problem, it's incredibly solvable. And again, that's the hard part for us to watch, is that we do understand it better than we used to. So I agree, education is a foundational step, except there's one thing that you've taught me, is that when you're trapped and frustrated and your brain's inflamed, it's hard to comprehend new information. And we also know in chronic pain that people's brains physically shrink. When you treat chronic pain, they physically re-expand. And what happens, and I see this all the time, and I will say it happened to myself, is that when your brain's inflamed, you can't think as clearly. So at Les, what you taught me is this whole process of the somatic work, which I now think gives people much more hope of actually bringing the nervous system into a place where you can actually process new information. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it's very fair. And with the tools, again, I think it's beautiful the way you said that. Is we want to tell people the reason they hurt, it's not so much nerves tissue or structure or some sort of damage. Things have healed. And then folks say, but why? So the first and most important tool before doing anything else is understand why you really hurt. The tool from there on that David and I use to retrain the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. And again, that's just a fancy word for the brain and body.
Mhm.
kind of the cables in between are basically the nervous system. And one of the most important things, I'm going to smile as I say this because every time I say this to one of my patients, I said, oh no, I know how to do that, is breath work.
Yeah.
And so someone's like, yeah, I know, I've done that. I've taken a yoga retreat. Yeah, I know how to breathe. But what else you got? And I said, like right now, as you're getting upset with me because you may feel like this is basic information, how do you feel in your body? And I bring them back to the body and notice that. And here's a statement that I like to tease my patients with: your breathing states determine your mental states. So as you get upset, you start to kind of breathe faster. So breathing actually can determine your psychological states and even your pain states. So with that said, is one of the other basic tools that David and I both really encourage our patients is to do breath work to calm the autonomic nervous system, which then also includes mindfulness. And David has a set of tools also. And David, you want to fill in the blanks on a couple of things that you do to help retrain the brain and the body?
Well, there's five basic things. You already mentioned education,
Yeah.
and second one is the breath work. There's also like humming, the relaxation tools, et cetera. But those are anti-inflammatory. You're directly stimulating the vagus nerve. So that's what's been so powerful recently is that, and of course, you trained with Dr. Gewirtz, who actually taught you this from the beginning. So I was so excited to hear from Les about the things that the breath work does. You're directly stimulating the vagus nerve, which is powerfully anti-inflammatory. So then you have a chance of people calming down enough to actually listen. There's another process which has been absolutely mandatory and powerful. It's called expressive writing. You simply write down your thoughts and you tear them up. And there's different forms of it. And that's just the most simple starting point. But what happens is that you cannot control your thoughts. And we found out that mental pain is a bigger problem than physical pain because you cannot escape your thoughts. So unpleasant thoughts are a very powerful threat, and repressed thoughts and emotions are even more of a problem. And that's how I got myself in trouble as a surgeon, is that we are master at repressing stress at a level you cannot imagine. And I was 37 years old. I went from having no anxiety. I swear to God, Les, is true. I honestly did not know what the word meant. I actually had to look it up in the textbooks when people came with an anxiety disorder. So I went from no anxiety to a panic attack in 5 minutes. And for the next 15 years, I could not stop the process.
Mm.
So, and then unless you can add on to this, is that Dr. Porges taught us that in a panic attack is just a dysregulated autonomic nervous system, right?
Correct. Yeah, and I wanted to hop on a little bit on that and to continue like the tools, right? That's exactly it. So if you really think about this, is the nervous system. So everyone else around the world continues to look for structure, nerves, and tissue. What do I need to do? And we're teaching people that you have that power within you. And again, it's kind of like having gold and feeling it like you're a pauper. And that's what we're trying to show people is once you figure this out, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. It's a lifestyle we're teaching it. So no matter what David and I say today, this is a lifestyle for pain recovery. And so one of the other tools that David and I use, and in his great method, and I have my method too, is no matter what we are doing, we're actually teaching folks specific skills that are evidence-based, meaning that it's been tested out scientifically and shown to be thumbs up. We're teaching people, and here's another key sentence, teaching them to relate differently to when they feel that sensation in their pants, when they feel that overwhelming, when they feel that tension build up, the burning sensation. We teach them in specific tools that have been scientifically tested. We show them 1, 2, 3. Here's what you do when you're feeling overwhelmed and the pain is starting to dominate you. And so that's a very important tool that sort of sets the whole pace here. Is not just breath work, not just meditation, but having specific evidence-based treatment to say is when this shows up, here's how you relate to it. Because and David, you can kind of hop on this. The way we look at this is the first sign of success in your pain recovery towards that journey of healing is not fearing your pain. And once you can reduce
Right.
that fear, once you realize when something uncomfortable shows up, if you can be in the middle of it and learn to relate differently to it, you start to desensitize your nervous system. And those are the tools we offer. David, anything else to add to it?
Well, what the principle here is creating some space.
Yep.
Right. And so remember, when you're anxious or frustrated, you're reacting. And so I didn't quite finish up the expressive writing. Sorry about that. I segued here, but with the expressive writing, you can't escape your thoughts. So the thoughts are on the table. You're here. There's now a space between you and your thoughts. The reason why I tear up the piece of paper is, first of all, to write with freedom, because it's the unpleasant thoughts that torture us. And so you want to write with freedom. But the more important part, as you write, all these issues come up. They're not issues, they're just thoughts. And so you tear them up so you don't analyze these things. So that creates a little bit of a space. And you can do it because it's mechanical, it's very concrete. And I used to try mindfulness meditation as a starting point, which skilled meditators can do the same thing, but it's not a good starting point where you're desperately seeking chronic pain. So what Les is describing is another way of creating that space, right, Les?
Yep, you nailed it.
And
Yep.
can you have a couple of stories about how don't you use a monitor when you do this with people? About not
I do pre-COVID, that is, and I usually tell people who I work with, and when I first met David, I told him what I was doing. So I have them hooked up to a biofeedback machine, and I can look at the laptop while so the laptop sits next to them, and I can look at their heart rate, I can look at their muscle tension, the galvanic, their skin, and they've got this stone cold face, and their heart rate's up, their breathing is off. And I asked him, how you doing? Do you feel sad or depressed? Nope. And then the heart changes. And so then I show them just simply learning to kind of be in the middle of a symptom without over identifying with it, changes everything, even without much effort. And then when they see the physiological changes without much effort, because everything we do as human beings, we want good things, we push bad things. It's normal, very human. We teach you to be neutral. And in that neutrality, you reduce the threat system in your nervous system and things start to settle down. So it's kind of like reparenting your brain and body.
That's a great way to do it. But again, going back to the model of the three things, you have the
Mm.
input, the nervous system, and the output. So you say the word reparenting, you're actually, through neuroplasticity, you're stimulating your brain to change. And with the nervous system, and this is where I think the psychology
So
comes in.
can I stop you for 1 second, David? Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change, right? Just for people who may not know the term.
Right. So every second, your brain's changing. So you new neurons, new connections, the brain shifts to different spots. And so we used to think the brain was static. When I was in medical school, we thought the brain was completely static. It changes every second. And so you can't control your anxiety, but what consciousness does, it gives you the steering wheel. You can direct it. And as you direct it to where you want it to go, that's why you can't fix your pain. You can train your brain to go where you want it to go. But if you're trying to fix the pain, you're actually reinforcing it. So the two key factors as far as solving chronic pain is neuroplasticity. And I have one patient who's had 28 surgeries in 22 years. He has no pain for 5 years. So I'm not convinced you can program a new nervous system within the old one for anybody. That's why these phantom limb patients can go pain-free. And so the new nervous system is like putting a virtual desktop on your computer. This new nervous system doesn't have pain.
So your patient had 22 years, had 20 some odd
28
28
surgeries,
surgeries, and that did not work for him.
none of them.
And then he came to you and you reworked his system. So now he is pain-free without it.
So what happened, he tried to commit suicide, high alcohol use, high opioids. He tried to commit suicide in Southern California. And then of course his wife saved him from that. So he had to come off high-dose opioids. High-dose opioids are inflammatory and they sensitize the brain. So as he came off the opioids, he started to think more clearly. And then the physician on there kept asking him, well, again, this is to Les conversation, what are you so angry about? And he goes, I'm not angry. And this is after 28 surgeries. And he goes, I'm not angry. Anyway, long story short, within 2 weeks after he crossed the anger threshold, his pain went away. Now, then he got my book. And so the pain dropped down dramatically. And then over the next 2 years, he started using the book and the website and putting more and more tools into place. And I just talked to him last week. And for some reason, in the last month, he hit another threshold of pain-free that he's never felt like this in his entire life. So once your brain starts to change, once you change that filter, how you process information, it keeps changing and changing and changing. and it keeps growing. That's what we're excited about, is that once you learn the tools yourself, you own them.
Right.
Keep growing. And I'm not against pain clinics just because they work, but remember, in the pain clinic, they're doing things to you. You don't necessarily own it. And when you leave the structure of the pain clinic, a lot of people, tend to, within a year, tend to go back to their own ways. So we've helped people change that filter, and Les's work with the heart rate variability and the autonomic nervous system monitoring is brilliant because it connects your brain to your body. Is that a fair statement, Les?
Yep, well said.
Okay. So you mentioned breath work. You mentioned expressive writing.
Right.
What are other tools that are part of your constellation, your toolkit?
I'm glad we're coming back around to that. Is one of the cool things. So there's a couple of other evidence-based treatments that we use. Something called acceptance and commitment therapy. Sounds like resignation, but it's not. It's basically a way to expose it to your thoughts and feelings and sensations without reacting to them. It's a very skill. And again, for the audience, they may not have heard of this word evidence-based because it sounds kind of a weird term. It basically means if they've done studies to show us this is quite effective. That's the short end of it. So acceptance. And I also wanted to, very excitedly, so I'm glad we came back around. One of the things I'll be doing in this workshop that David and I are putting on is that we're going to show you how to talk to your pain. I know it sounds ridiculous. And the first time I treat a lot of physicians, and when I tell them, all right, so now in our training, I'm going to show you how to talk to your pain. And they said, oh boy, here's the psychobabble. But here's the point. The way I teach patients to talk to their pain, to dial the pain down, is basically what I call befriending your pain in a 5-step process. And I'll walk you through it. And towards the end, we really understand why the mind, the nervous system, why it's protecting you, why it keeps producing pain. And when we can find out the essence of why your pain specifically is producing, you can really dismantle it by even talking to your pain and telling it to dial down. So that's one of that, and that's using something called IFS, Internal Family System, which is Internal Family Systems. It's basically an evidence-based treatment also that shows you how to talk to your pain, how to talk to your anxiety. It's basically, think of our mind as different parts and they're trying to protect us. And so that's the psychology to that, and that's the psychology of the pain. And again, I'm very big on mindfulness meditation as another part of it.
Okay.
So two of the things that come up, which is part of the workshop, is that we find out, so every time, so my wife and I and stepdaughter have done these workshops, and we've had different people join us. We're really excited about Les because he brings this whole dimension that we have not had in the workshops. But we basically find out in a structured, safe setting, people heal each other. And we find out that oxytocin is a major factor. It's a bonding chemical. We also found out that it is anti-inflammatory. Every workshop we've done, 70 to 80% of people have gone pain-free in the workshop within 3 to 5 days. And we've been shocked. And now working with Dr. Carter and Dr. Portis, we sort of know the reason why, that we're really helping people connect with each other. And I realize I create the structure and whatever, but people really heal each other. That really is the magic of the workshop, I think, is that social connection. We also know out of Texas, there's a major paper, Dr. Dancer's paper, shows that social connection is anti-inflammatory. And Dr. Carter now has told us, well, it's because of the oxytocin. And so as they take off on that one thing that is unusual, we learned this sort of the hard way, is that we do not let people discuss their pain at all. And they're shocked because they think they're going to go there to really just analyze their pain and really solve it. Well, we're there for the solutions. We're not there to be focused on the pain because your attention on the problem. So that means no advice giving, no criticism, no complaining, no discussing the pain. Those are major factors in healing because you want to move forward and not move backwards. So the question is, what do you want in life? I mean, what's your vision of what you want your life to look like? How are you going to get there? And as you pursue it, your brain starts to change. So we do the expressive writing, which is over 1,200 research papers documenting the effectiveness of expressive writing. There's a lot of work on mindfulness meditation, and people are shocked on the expressive on the not discussing their pain. But also my wife, Babs, is a tap dancer, rhythm person. And my stepdaughter, Jazz, is an expressive arts therapist. And in the workshops, they're about half the workshop. And they turn out to be sort of the stars of the show. Because what's happening, people heal each other. It's not about just learning enough to get better, but they start sharing enjoyable experiences together. They just start to laugh. And what's your body chemistry like when you're laughing? And that's what makes the shift. That happens quickly. So you shift from pain circuits to play circuits. That happens like now, changes your body chemistry, and the pain really does disappear. Not for everybody. I mean, everybody's got a different story, but it's remarkable how often that happens.
That's great. So I've heard breath work. I've heard acceptance commitment therapy. I've heard talking to your pain, some dialoguing, mindfulness, social interaction, future thinking, laughter. So these are all kind of hallmarks of a healthy, balanced life. And I know, not to oversimplify it, that is like the hardest thing in life to do, is to create a lifestyle that is protective and healthy. But I'm also hearing that this is now evidence-based. It is the science, and there's physiological effects of these practices. And that physiological effect doesn't have to be drugs or in a physical intervention, that you actually have the control within yourself. But it sounds like people benefit, of course, from the guidance that experts like you two give, right?
I do want to say something really important here.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is a healthy life. So why don't all of us do this?
Right.
Right? Okay, so the problem is we're all programmed by our past. So the behavioral patterns always win. So that's why there's a sequence. That's why you start with expressive writing relaxation to calm down the inflammatory response. Not discussing your pain is hard. People are used to complaining. They used to discuss, I mean, probably 70% of the waking hours are spent discussing their pain. So there's a behavioral, so it sounds simple at one level, and it's not hard, but
Right.
it does repetition actually change those behavioral patterns. So that's why the sequencing is critical. That's why at the workshop, people will go to pain-free, but they won't stay that way, because they go home and go to their triggers and get re-triggered. But guess what? The brain has now sensed what the possibilities are, so it's easier to get back there. So we have lots of people from Omega 8 years ago that we're in contact with, and that weekend gave them hope. We also know that hope is anti-inflammatory. So that's why I want to make really clear that, yeah, if all of us lived a healthy life, we wouldn't be in this shape. But again, why don't we lead that healthy life? So that's the key issue, is getting those behavioral patterns. And that's where lessons about feedback, et cetera, really connects your mind to your body, because your body's going to survive no matter what.
Right.
And once you understand that connection and can redirect it, that's a huge difference.
Great. So I'm going to pull in a few other things here. We keep hearing vagus nerve and anti-inflammatory. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because it seems like that's related to all of these different practices.
Unless you want to talk about that a little bit, Dr. Gewurz was your
Sure.
master.
Yeah, sure. How about I'll start it off and you can jump on in with the neurochemistry to that. Real simplistically, from the brainstem, the part of us that the brain part that controls our breathing, our heart rate, our digestion, it's all unconscious. And so can you imagine if we woke up one day and we forgot to hit that on button of I need to breathe or digest food? So we're wonderfully made. So we have a brain part called the brainstem, which controls all our important vitals within. So that's one. And so what about the vagus nerve? Well, the 10th cranial nerve that comes out of that brainstem all the way down and in through our internal organs, it basically touches, it's like the longest nerve in the body that goes into our nervous system that basically communicates when we're stressed or not. So when the nervous system is being applied, it's when we feel safe. When you breathe, when you hum, when you play, when you laugh. And it promotes a sense of safety, and then our immune system gets stronger and the inflammation actually drops. So the vagus nerve, we try to do it in any which way. So all the interventions we talk, let's just call it lifestyle. When your lifestyle is balanced, your vagus nerve is the healthiest. And so what that means is basically it impacts the neurochemistry. So all the chemistry. So think of it as a weighing scale. When your nervous system is balanced, that means your vagus nerve, which is also called the wandering nerve, because it wanders to all the internal organs, all the major organs. It basically sends information to the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve sends it all the way up back to the brain. So this is why it's not just the brain or the body. It is the brain body, which is called the nervous system. David, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Yeah, again, it's changed the game for me because in chronic pain, there's over 30 different physical symptoms that are created, and I never could figure that out. But if you look at the autonomic nervous system, each organ can respond in its own way. So I had 17 of these symptoms at the same time. So going back to the basics, your body takes your environment and translates it into reactions to help you survive. So it's not psychological. And again, remember the psychology is a big one because mental threats are a bigger problem than the physical threats. Right now I'm in a nice room, it's warm. It was called homeostasis, it's neutral. I'm not thinking, my body's automatically shifting, I'm automatically blinking, my pupils constrict and dilate, it's all automatic. So if all of a sudden the light flickered off or somebody knocked on the door really loudly, my autonomic nervous system would sense danger and I would do this. So it's all automatic. And so by learning to access those parts of your body and have some say over how those react, it's a powerful process. And again, once people understand that they don't have to remember, anxiety is amoral, is protective, it's going to protect you no matter what. So people get their identity mixed up with the survival reaction and they feel bad about it. So the first thing I do with people is say, look, take this word anxiety and get rid of it. Just say my nervous system's reacting to the environment. I have an elevated stress response. Visualize a very large thermometer on the opposite wall and just visualize how high it is or isn't going. And so when you feel anxious and frustrated, just sort of drop it down. And then what happens when you separate this reaction from your identity, then you start to thrive. Remember, it's 20 million versus 40 bits of information per second. So once you separate your consciousness from this survival reaction, which again is very unpleasant, is amoral, is destructive. And Les said something that was really powerful with the ACT therapy. You're not going to conquer anxiety. You can't do it. You don't want to do it. So I don't like the word accept anxiety because it's an unpleasant feeling. But you use the phrase, Les, I use the word develop a working relationship with it. What was the word you used with the ACT?
To learn to relate differently.
Right.
So,
because it's there.
yeah.
It's your friend, like you said.
Right.
Yes.
If you fight it, then guess what? We know repressing anxiety makes it worse. If you fight it, you've given it neurological attention. And from a neuroplasticity standpoint, you want to stimulate your brain to change where you want it to go. So fighting anxiety does not help you move forward with the life that you want. What I feel is tragic, people graduate from high school excited about their future because they spend so much time fighting this survival reaction over and over and over again, they just get worn out. So all of a sudden you're 40 years old, you have the resources and means to do what you want to do, and you're just crushed by anxiety. But I do want to say one quick thing about the workshop before we're sort of running out of time here, is anger.
Okay.
Because that is the essence of healing in my experience, is that every person that's healed, they've gotten better without processing anger. But anger and play don't really exist in the same room. And when you're angry, your body's really fired up. It doesn't feel very good. It's powerful and it's destructive. So every person I've seen to the person hasn't really broken through true healing until they've crossed the anger threshold. So Saturday morning on our workshop is focused just on anger. Then Les on the afternoon is going to work on adding some more dimensions to that.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Let's drop into the workshop. May 21st to the 23rd is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you two and David, your wife, and your stepdaughter, You're hosting a workshop that you've actually offered in other ways in other centers and will continue to offer. But we are very lucky at the Open Center that you're coming to us in May. And it's 3 days, and it's not 3 full days. But will you talk a little bit about what people can expect and, you know, who should raise their hand and say, yes, this workshop's for me? Can you describe your ideal participant?
Well, first of all, everybody has anxiety and frustration. So it's a great stress management workshop. So for even if you don't have quote chronic classic pain, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. So Friday evening is just 2.5 hours where we break into small groups. Les and I will give lectures. Babs and Jazz will start doing some rhythm work and some relaxation work, and a little bit of homework, a little bit of writing relaxation. And then Saturday is about anger and forgiveness and processing anger. Then Les, you want to talk about Saturday afternoon?
Yeah, so Saturday afternoon is really excited to do this, to kind of take all this complexity and put it into a sense of structure of how to talk to your pain, how to befriend your anxiety, how to befriend why does your mind or brain or body, why is it attacking you like this? And we basically walk you through steps on how to talk to it and get the essence of that. So basically showing you on a whole different level that when you feel what you feel, it's not bad. And I know it feels bad, but I'm going to show you that it's a form of love and protection that the mind and brain is doing, the nervous system, and show you how to talk to it, to dial it down.
I'm also thinking out loud here. I just realized as I was listening to you that you're doing the same thing that I say, we'll separate from this reaction. You're talking to us, so the reaction's over there and you're here. So your identity, again, gets separated from this reaction that you need to stay alive. And so then Saturday evening, we have a sharing session where people just share parts of their lives with other people in their group. And it's just been the most powerful part of the workshop. It's just kicking back, relaxing, and sharing, because there's not that many places in life that you feel safe, right? I mean, it's hard with your family sometimes, it's hard at work, it's hard just to survive and thrive. So you feel very safe, and just that sharing part of your life with other people in a safe, structured environment has been very powerful. Then Sunday, we're done by noon. We have a little bit of warm up, and then we're going to give people the tools again to go home and take home with them. So you want to give them a taste of safety, but we really want to give them a toolbox of strategies they can use going forward indefinitely. But
Great.
it's practice is what makes this thing work.
Fantastic. So all of the information is available online at opencenter.org. But I also know that both of you have quite strong online presence, and you provide a lot of tools. You have 2 different home bases. David, you have the DOC project. So the DOC project.
It's called the DOC Journey, Direct Own Care Journey, the DOC Journey. Just a 6-month program, which includes a guided course, includes twice a week workshops, question and answer periods. There's webinars, there's videos. And so it's really been, plus the sequencing is really critical. That's what's been helpful. So it provides tools. Dr. Aria is one of the stars on the guided tour. And honestly, I know I give you a lot of grief, but I mean, your whole concept of actually calming down the nervous system, so Les, why does it work for me? Why is my nervous system not calmed down?
It's because I need some extra sessions with you.
Okay. Anyway, for most people, it works pretty well. So anyway, there's a book called Back in Control, A Surgeon's Roadmap Out of Chronic Pain, that gives you the framework. And then the DOC Journey is the action plan. There'll also be an app coming out in a few weeks. That's a separate experiential app based on our workshops. So, and then the final thing is, I will just throw this in. The reason I quit spine surgery to do this, I was seeing so much surgery done on normal spines that was harmful and destructive. I couldn't watch it anymore. So I did write a book called Do You Really Need Spine Surgery? That flat out lays it out there. Just 2 things to think about: the anatomy and the state of your nervous system. So it gives you very clear reasoning about how to make a surgical decision about your spine. So that's where I'm at right now. And I'm excited about the DOC Journey. I'm excited about these workshops with Les. And there's a lot going on.
Great. And then Les, I found YouTube videos. I mean, I know there's probably more, but you have these fantastic YouTube videos that provide step-by-step, so easy to understand guidance around psychology and breathing and so forth. Will you tell us a little bit about that and whatever else you offer?
Sure, absolutely happy to. And so I started the YouTube channel out of last March out of frustration for my patients who lost their insurance. And I thought, and they wanted some form of tools. And so the website, the YouTube channel is called Mindfulness, and that's with a Y. So it's MYNTFULNESS, mindfulness. Or they can also go to Les Aria phd.com, phd.com, and I have some information there. And basically, David and I just want a platform of being able to help people go beyond this the weekend immersion if they want additional help for that matter, and other free resources to be able to guide people.
That's great. Now, I also know that you're hosting, is it weekly conversations, and they are at least participated in by doctors, physicians, other professionals around the world. Am I right about that, or?
Yeah, once a week for last year, started with Les, myself, Dr. Porges, and our friend Dr. Clausen, and another friend of mine, Ray Bunnage, where we, every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we would meet. And there's now about 200 people on the list. And we've now gone to twice a month. But what is exciting is that we just keep diving deeper and deeper into the basic science. And so it's exciting for the basic science researchers because they're seeing a lot of their work come into clinical play. And we're excited because it has such profound impact on what we do clinically. And
Yeah.
last week, we had, actually it's coming up again this week, Dr. Navio out of San Diego is taking this whole chronic disease process down to what's called the mitochondria, which are some of the smallest things in existence that are the engines of the cells. And when you're under threat, these mitochondria disintegrate. And you can't just put it back together. You have to regenerate this. And so he's taken 13 chronic diseases, everyone he's studied, and it all comes down to this common cell destructive response. So it's really exciting to watch how deep this is going.
That's amazing. It feels like, panning back in the context of the current times that we're living in a pandemic, with a lot of social awakening that's happening. There's a lot of anxiety, reactivity, anger, all of it. But there's also the work that you're doing, which is inviting us to use it as portals for healing and for growth and self-awareness. So hard times, but with the fruit that you're bearing. And I'm so glad that you're able to be accessible to people across time zones and locations. It's just really incredible work. Thank you so much. And the Open Center is very honored to host your next event, and May 21st to the 23rd. It's very affordably priced, and there are scholarships available. So anybody who needs to come can come. Any last parting words before we say goodbye? And
Yeah, I have one. Go out and have fun because it stimulates you, sense your vagus nerve. Smile, laugh at least once heartily today, and you will feel a shift in you. David?
Yeah,
Parting words.
enjoy your day today.
that's awesome. Well, David and Les, thank you. And Open Center, thank you. And to everybody who's watching us now and later, thank you so much. Much love, and enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.